What's new, Saucy crew? It's your boy Saucy back at it again with a new video, and it's a great day because you know why we're here today with Kek Filet. All
Oh.
right, so we have a special new video. We're gonna be covering Enel, and Kek's gonna be asking me a few questions. And without further ado, take it away, Kek.
All right. Hey, thank you so much for that solid introduction to the year 2024. Today's actually January 1st, the night of, and I talked with Saucy quite a bit, and I ended up getting him I roped him into doing a guide just for his channel. Okay, I actually make guides for another channel and another Patreon for other stuff, and I think it was a lot better. Yeah, I thought it was a lot really good to talk to Saucy about Enel because he has had experience with Enel so far, and I'd like to kind of get that full rundown of the deck list, the Mulligan, the first, going second, early game, ending games, and matchups. He may not have in depth for that, but he's gonna answer the best we can just for you guys at home, hopefully making things easier. So I appreciate you having me here, but I'm going to be asking a lot of the questions here and my new little setup as we get going. But I guess let's just jump into it. I first want to ask why play Enel?
Why play Enel? I mean, Enel is honestly one of the strongest yellow leaders to date, if not the strongest at the moment. Sorry, category. You've been replaced. Enel's extremely difficult to kill late game, which gives it an extraordinary matchup against aggro decks, and also has very strong late game potential with all the big bombs that you're playing late game. So it's a great choice for big events like regionals, things of that nature, because the deck can be extremely consistent and it's very hard to kill. So decided to go with that for the regionals, and I think it did pretty well.
Yeah. You did really good. I know Nationals coming up. You have your you already have like your invite slash way to top, well, past X2, right? Same with me.
Round by.
And this is honestly a solid deck. Everyone knows the yellow's pretty trigger happy, and honestly it steals games. It really does steal games. I'm sure a lot of people I've reading comments like Enel had no chance winning that game, but then they hit that one trigger that made them win that game, which
the one veggie.
That's that's what's gonna happen to a lot of people right now. It's the extra factor that cannot really be valued for unless it just happens, right? So I think it's also an additional reason.
Definitely couldn't agree with you more on that. I think with all the triggers, it definitely pushes yellow, over the top sometimes if you get extremely lucky. However, it's not something you should solely rely on. Definitely want to make sure that you can still win if you're not triggering. Actually, now that I'm looking at our deck list here, I think we do need to make a few adjustments. I think you have Thunderbird there. Should be a Maru. The event at the bottom right. All the way to the right. Yeah.
That's whoops. Yep. We need to do Volts, right?
Yeah, you don't want Thunderbird.
How do I find this?
Maru. Maru.
Oh, boom. Okay. Well, hey, everyone knew it was an event that did that. Okay, so
yeah, it's a 2-cost event that does good things.
Yeah. I am not going to go into every single card and read what they do. Hopefully you at home know what these cards already do, but I will read out this one as just a main. One of your leaders or characters gains 3k power, and if you have 1 or less life, it rests one of your opponent's 4 costs or less, so it can rest those pesky blockers. And that's really strong. Now, I find it annoying that all these colors are getting these gain 3k power for 2 events, for 2 costs for an event. It's actually extremely obnoxious, right? Yeah. So it's a weird trend that they do, which is honestly a great finisher, which I guess it's better to put that on an event than anything else. But
yeah,
actually, no, I changed my mind about this. This is a good card. I used to think it was a little overbearing, but I think it's just a good card. So let's actually, Amaru. I thought it was over good, like way too good. But maybe it's actually just perfectly
It's a
balanced.
pretty conditional card. You can't actually really use it like early game because you have to be at 1 health to use it. So it's mostly a closing tool. And against certain decks like Law, where you can get to 1 health pretty quickly, it's a good way to help you board clear.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Got it. And then with that, I do want to say, what are some of like the mistakes that people make against the nail that you think, maybe should be kind of brought up here before we actually get into everything? But what are
Oh man,
mistakes that
should
people
we?
make mistakes?
I mean, most commonly, what people like to do, mistakenly, is swing into Enel while Enel is at one health,
Mm-hmm.
and without any secondary swing after that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like if I'm at one health already,
Mm-hmm.
and you only have one attack, don't bother. Just just don't bother attacking because
Mm-hmm.
all you're doing at that point is activating Enel's ability to regain the life and giving your opponent an additional way to
Yeah.
potentially trigger and then cycle a card from their hand, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. They can do both. The trigger is actually even better. They trigger
Both,
and get a card out of
exactly.
their hand. So I
Yeah, so
did that
that
happen a lot to you at your event?
yeah, I mean in the regional, being that still a fairly new deck, people still trying to figure out. So many people were
Yeah.
just swinging into me for no reason when they didn't need to because I'm already at one health, and they're
Mm-hmm.
just like giving me ways to cycle through bricks in my hand, which Enel kind of has a number of in the deck. So you definitely don't want to swing into Enel while they're at one health,
Mm-hmm.
um, if you don't have a secondary swing.
Would you say that like that definitely over won you games, or that won you games because people made that mistake, or just
It's
it was a
definitely
combination?
allowed me to, cycle through bricks from my hand, and
Mm-hmm.
that paid dividends when it came to, end game. So yeah,
Okay,
definitely
got
gave me
it.
a lot of advantage.
Got it. Yeah. My personal thing against the nail, I actually don't even like to put you down to one health. I'll try to keep you down to two health. Build board
Yeah,
because you're just getting free value with Yamato, right? Keep it down to two health and then build board. Obviously, Enel has ways against it. They could just reduce their health by one, right? With Thunderbolt, and then next turn do things. But it's
yeah, it's a good strategy.
a
Another one,
strategy.
yeah, one strategy you can do is definitely like, leave them at two, which makes Yamato kind of a useless card unless they just play it, and pop something. Sometimes
Hmm.
they can't even pop something.
Yeah.
Another thing that you can do is force them to have Yamato by leaving them at like zero health. If you leave them
Hmm.
at zero, they either have to play a Yamato or have a Katakuri in hand to go back to one. And
Hmm.
if you're doing that every turn, eventually they're just gonna run out of, Yamatos and Katakuri, and you could just kill them on the following turn.
Yeah.
So
Makes
that's another
sense.
route you can take.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
But I can see that like keeping Yamato Enel at one or two life and build board and then go wide, right? So, um,
Definitely. What you want to typically do? I don't know if this is a segment,
sure.
but the strategy essentially is, if you're playing against a Nell, just play bodies every turn
Hmm.
and only swing with your leader. Most NL players will just take every hit that they take. So just swing
Hmm.
five and don't actually swing with your bodies. Just swing with your lead. And once you get to late game
Hmm.
and they're at one health, you should have a wide enough board where you can just swing with all your bodies in one
Hmm.
turn. And then just with any luck, you can close out the game.
Yeah, exactly. You don't even have to swing too tall, but obviously
Yeah,
easier said than done. And Nell has all those tools to fight against that. But it's even easier if your opponent doesn't know what to do against you. So, uh, I guess it's
sure.
a people kind of have to figure out what they have to do in order to do that because their strategy might be like all different, right? Um,
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, like what we talked about, just go wide,
mhm,
play a bunch of bodies, just swing with the leader, and get them to that one health. And once you position yourself and you have at least three or four characters on board, just swing with all your guys and force your opponent to discard cards from their hand or
mhm.
basically lose.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, let's go over a little bit on the deck list. I guess we just have generally the deck list here. Am I missing anything particular? We have three Gadatsus, right? And yeah, I think that's basically everything you were looking to say. Is there anything you want to
Yeah,
mention specifically about the deck list you want to point out? I know this is the one with Holy and Ohm where you're able to go wide. I think that's just the normal deck that
yeah. I'm
likes to do this.
There's a couple builds online with Enel. Right
Mm,
now, the generally accepted two builds are the Big Mom package and the Sky package.
mm,
I prefer the Sky package personally. I
mm,
think the Sky package has a better Sakazuki matchup.
Yeah.
and a lot of it is attributed towards the 7-drop Enel. It's easier for you to search in the Sky version of the deck, and that card is very potent into Sokka, even if they force you to go first. Actually, it's better if they force you to go first, because it's a body that's extremely difficult to remove. They literally have to kill it twice
Yeah.
for them to remove this off your
Yeah,
board.
this card's extremely sticky, right? I play things
Yeah.
like, Queen, and I play a Mihawk, and I can't get rid of it.
Yeah, there's two things Sokka hate most: cards that are extreme are hard to remove, and cards that have rush. And Nell has both. So
Yeah.
what I was saying, it's a great card into
Yeah, I mean,
Sokka.
what do? You have to swing at it and also play like a removal.
Yeah,
It
basically, the
becomes
ideal
difficult.
turn would be like Ice Age into Hound Blaze, and then swing into Enel, and hope they don't have any counters.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
you would Ice
that's
Age. Oh, okay. You would Ice Age Enel, you Hound Blaze,
yeah.
swing into Enel first, and then if they use this, if you use a skill, then they can. Wait a minute.
Well,
Oh,
the Hound Blaze will use up Enel's ability,
yeah.
right? So you only
But
get the
Enel
Hound
will come
Blaze.
back standing, right? Or does it come back rested?
No, he just doesn't die. So instead of being set KO'd, he just stays on the
Oh.
board, and you lose a life.
Oh, okay, got it. So you would still be there rested, but if they
Yeah, so
invest all
they
their dawn into doing that, maybe they can get rid of an Enel. But that's a lot of.
yeah, and then they have to commit all their dawn basically to
Mm-hmm.
swing into it. But by that time, you kind of already got value. You already swung
Mm-hmm.
into their, leader with it,
You play
and they
another
have to
one.
commit a full turn basically to remove it. Yeah. Or
Yeah.
next turn, I
I,
just play like a Yamato or something.
Yeah,
So,
I had some guy
um,
play two of these on me one time in a game, and he was playing Katakuri actually with Enel, and I was like, "What the heck? I can't even."
whoa,
Yeah, it was actually a budget build basically, but he actually beat
interesting.
me with two Enels. Like I can't get rid
Yeah,
of these. Like they were just too
and that was a
sticky.
good card, man. It's hard. It's hard to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. So got it. I guess there's really no other big monster cards. Yeah, obviously Yamato is very desired. Katakuri is very desired. You can gain a life. You maybe even playing Shirahoshi's from your hand to there.
Yeah.
You could swing with your Sanji and then put the Katakuri down, right? To put the Sanji back in life. It
Yep.
looks like there's a
Katakuri is
good thing.
Yamato's obviously your best bomb
Mm,
in your deck. Katakuri is a close second. It's another
mm,
way for you to heal life and get to 1 life.
mm,
In this deck, you really want to make sure that you're at least at 1 life at the end of every turn, because one
mm,
life equals 3 life basically, or
mm.
3 attacks for
Yeah,
you in this
exactly.
deck. So
Yeah.
it's very hard for your opponent to deal with, and generally you just focus on board clear so
Mm.
that your opponent isn't able to, hit you 3 times, and you just
Yeah.
essentially gas
It
them out.
it straight up is a resource kind of thing. It does, and I've seen play this sort of starve engine against some decks, right? But
Yeah.
um
The cool thing about Enel is that it's a very good at pivoting strategies. You could play a control strategy into like Zoro, into like Law, or you can go more a rush centric strategy into Law, not Law, my apologies, into Katakuri or like Sakazuki. The deck can really pivot really easily in that way. The only difficulty you'll probably have is purple decks, which I'm sure we'll get into in a later time. I can get into it now if you'd like.
yeah, I mean we'll go into all those matchups. I'd rather go into just the general basis of the deck lists and the Mulligan,
Sure.
but we'll definitely go
Mhm.
into every single matchup. And then I mean there doesn't have to be like a scripted thing, because this can go as long as you want. You can talk about whatever you want as far as
For
that
sure.
goes. But yeah, at least as far as the deck list goes, I'm glad we can have this starting
Yeah.
off with this. So with that, let's jump into Mulligans.
Well,
What are
one thing
we?
I'll say about the deck list real quick. I this is an ongoing you know, changing list.
Mhm,
I am playing with a different version at the moment, running for Shirahoshi.
mhm,
But this list is solid list, running only 3,
mhm,
and with addition of 2 brulees. Brulee for me had been kind of iffy just because it's a lot easier to remove this format, but it's still you
mhm.
still can't deny that it's a free blocker,
Yeah,
from life that can literally save you the game if your opponent's not ready for it.
yeah,
So great card.
yeah. Got it. Right. With that, I'd like to go into the Mulligan step. What cards are you looking to sort of mulligan for?
When it comes to this deck, you really want to play on curve. So with your opening hand, depending on if you're going first or second, you generally want to see either like a Shura Searcher or an Ohm in your opening hand. That will allow you to dig for key cards that you need.
Mm-hmm.
Ohm is basically your bread and butter play on your second turn.
Mm-hmm.
You if you go second, you play Ohm. Hopefully, you have Holy in your hand or find it on the top 5 cards of your deck. And if you're able to play both on your second turn, it's such a strong play that you're already set up for success in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Into certain decks like Sakazuki, it's extremely difficult for them to remove 2 bodies uh, on their third or second turn.
Yeah.
So it's a very strong play. And then if you open a Gidatsu or a Enel, those cards are also key to play on your third or fourth dawn turn or on your fourth turn.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, you want to be looking for a Yamato as well. Yamato and Katakuri are the only bombs in your deck that you really need to find by drawing because you can't search for them, and they are keys to success for you to keep your life up at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
game.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, I do want to say there's a small thing people miss out when when you're mulliganing and you do see a Gudatsu or you're hoping to see Gudatsu. A lot of Enel players will not attack at all until their 5 dawn turn, where they can play Gudatsu right on curve, so they can remove, let's say, a 4 health card or a 4 dawn card. You'll even see like opponents not play a 4 dawn card because of Gudatsu.
Yeah,
um,
it's a common practice in the past where Enel players would skip the first swing so they could set up for the Gidatsu play, but
mhm.
it's so obvious sometimes when you skip your swing
Yeah.
that your opponent will generally play around that. And much to
Mm-hmm.
the point where, like, for example, like Sakazuki, if you skip swinging your first swing, they will not play their Kuzan on their 4 dawn turn. They will literally play anything but Kuzan. They'll go like Borsalino
They
or
need to
something.
play a Borsalino. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why like the Kuzan's kind of fallen out of favor in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
decks right now. In my build of Sakazuki, I actually only run like
Yeah.
2
Yeah,
Kuzans because
and people are upping their people. Some people are running less Borsalino, but because of like the purple Luffy matchup, they're running more Borsalino or even Sakazuki. It's having a sticky card is
yeah,
absolutely really gross on your 4 dawn curve. So
yeah, super
and
important.
especially against like purple Luffy. Purple Luffy's like whole curve right now is ruined if they have a Borsalino, right? But
Yeah,
because of that poly.
exactly.
But with this, it's
Um,
kind of something similar, but you can do that. Does it really hurt you just to wait a turn to attack? I feel like most of the time it's like
no,
it's not, you're never really in a rush. This deck is not in a rush to kill your opponent. You
depends
know?
on your matchup. If you're playing Kata, you really want to be as aggressive as possible.
Okay. Yeah, you
My
don't need
goal,
that, right? Yeah. You don't
yeah. So I actually try to like rush down Kata before they can even get to like 10 Dawn and play the 10 Mom
yeah.
because their goal is to get to 10
Yeah.
like safely.
If you can see like 2
Um,
ohms and 2 holies, you pretty much almost guaranteed win that
oh yeah,
match too.
you're guaranteed to win. But
Yeah.
the good thing about Enel is that you have so many triggers that you have a high potential actually to even like stick bodies on board.
Mhm.
Like you could hit your Satori, you could hit your Sanji early on,
Mhm.
and you have extra 5K swings into their face, which Kata really struggles into.
Yeah.
If you can get them to around like 1 health before their 10 dawn turn, they're
Mhm.
likely not
They,
gonna feel
they
safe
might
to.
even try to do a damage deny game against you and just 10 mom all your cards out of your life instead. That's
Mhm.
not a very good strategy, but I've seen it, right? So um,
Oh, like
they,
you're saying, not swing at all.
yeah, I mean, if they can, if it helps them, right? But
Yeah.
I do that. I mean, I do that right now as queen. I can keep you at 4 life. Actually, I think I keep you like at 2 life. But that's obviously it's a very niche matchup where it's actually pretty good. Pretty good. I'd say the matchup's positive for queen.
I'm
But
not gonna lie. Into a lot of decks that don't swing early,
mm,
it really hurts actually for the NL player because
mm,
we really want to take life early so we could
Mm-hmm.
see more cards and potentially trigger so to gain advantage. If your
Mm-hmm.
opponent's not swinging into you, it kind of hurts our tempo a little bit and
Yeah.
potentially not even find the cards that we need because we're
Yeah.
not taking damage.
I think every deck would love to get swung into early. It's actually obnoxious if you don't get swung into by like Nami or something like that. Does it throws you way off? Even though usually it's a pretty free matchup for most people, um, but yeah, I see that. Okay, got it. But for I guess you're saying for go back to the Mulligan, just follow your curve, right? But you're looking
Yep.
for definitely if you see an ohm, you're probably gonna keep it.
Yep.
And anything like Yamato, this if you have too many trigger cards or events in your hand, you're probably just gonna mulligan these because you'd rather
That's a
have
good
these
point.
in your life.
Yep. Be mindful of all the triggers that you're drawing in
Mm-hmm.
your opening hand. If you're drawing like 4 trigger cards, you probably want to mulligan that because you
Mm-hmm.
need to have that in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So keep an eye on that. Seeing a Yamato in your opening hand is like high positive. You definitely want to see that. You definitely
Mm-hmm.
want to see the Ohm.
Yeah.
Shura is very useful in your opening as well. Those are I would say like the top 3 cards, and
Yeah.
then the fourth would be like seeing an Enel,
Yeah.
which is a solid play as well.
Yeah. Seems like there really isn't a lot of bad choices, but it's really good to see something like this sort of combo or maybe even
Mhm.
a Gadatsu. I don't know. I guess Gadatsu you're saying is falling out of favor a little bit, but it's okay. It's still an annoying option people have to
It's a good
respect. So.
card. It's very conditional against
Mm-hmm.
certain decks. 5 life decks, obviously, it's going to be much stronger into.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's still worth the keep because it is a
Mm-hmm.
form of removal, and we
Yeah,
all know how good removal is
and
in
yeah,
this game.
and Yellow has very bad removal,
Yeah.
as is stated. With this, what is the best course of action? You can go over any deck specifically. Should we be aiming to go first or second?
It really depends on the matchup. Like I said previously, Enel is a very flexible deck. You can aim for like a faster aggro play, or you can go for a more control or mid-range play.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so Enel really, it's kind of like Enel plays a lot like Queen in a way. I know Queen generally wants to go first, but there are
Really?
Queen
I thought I
players
was go
that
second.
basically go whatever their opponent wants to go. So if your
Mm-hmm.
opponent wants to go second, you go second. You want to
Yeah.
deny their position because it really doesn't hurt Enel to go first or second.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you have plays for either or, but I would be actually inclined to argue that going first is a stronger play with Enel
Uh,
just because your curve is a little bit better going first.
yeah, I could see that you have more options going first, basically, and it's
Yeah, but
a
second is honestly not bad either. Like
yeah.
either or. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, it's okay. Got it. So first, generally strong play. Second's definitely not bad. So you have lots of options. Great. What should we be looking to do in the first few turns?
Yeah, so going first, there's not a whole lot you can really do in your first 2 turns. Ideally, on your second turn, you want to play like a holy or a shura and set up for the Om play on the following turn. Um, but those are the 2 main cards you kind of want to see on your first or second turns.
Mm-hmm.
Going second, you want to see the Om. Obviously, you want to see the Shura and dig for the Ohm or dig
Mm-hmm.
for any other late game card you might need, like the Enel or like more 2K counters. You're not
Mm-hmm.
really going to be countering a whole lot early game because you're taking all the damage. So this deck plays a lot like Whitebeard in a sense where any damage sent to your life early game, you kind of just take and accumulate cards throughout the game, and you kind of use your whole. You'll have a giant hand at the end of the game where you're gonna use that essentially to keep yourself alive.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, very very big hand heavy, I would say too. So
Hmm.
got it. What are we looking to do to end games?
Yeah, so endgame, the main strategy is just to accumulate as many of your 8 and 9 drops in your hand and basically continuously play those cards every turn
Mm-hmm.
until you have a wide enough board where you can just close out the game strong. It depends on the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes your opponent is really pressuring your life and you're forced to go more aggressively and commit
Mm-hmm.
more dawn to clearing their board, and that's okay too, as long as you keep yourself as at least one life. You
Mm-hmm.
never want to end your opponent's on. You never want to be in a position where your opponent ends their turn with you at 0 life,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have any way to heal on your following turn because you're basically guaranteed to lose the following
Yeah.
turn. You know, if it gets back to
Yeah, that
them.
happens to any leader would probably, most likely,
Yeah,
right?
that's a fair
Um,
point.
but
More
like
so
with
with
Enel, even more so, it's really hard to
yeah,
break that one life barrier. I'm sure most Enels will just give up at that point. Like, I can't do anything. But most decks give
yeah,
up at 0 life. So,
definitely. I mean, other decks
yeah.
have options of like, playing blockers or like,
Mm-hmm.
different things to keep themselves up. NL really just relies on the heal to keep
Yeah.
themselves at one health to
Yeah.
continuously just
I guess
protect
Whitebeard
their
goes into
lives.
0 life. Sorry, so yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a thought. It's a lot easier to kill Whitebeard lately because of even this, 200 million volts. So that's like a
Yeah.
big option that came into the arsenal recently.
Yeah,
For
I
yellow.
can't say how many games I've closed out with that card. It's just such a strong card
Mm-hmm.
and definitely a must run in the deck.
Yeah, I would agree so too. I had a guy. I think he's playing kind of curry. He's playing 4, and he like discarded one early in the game because he used the skill
Mm.
of it, and he had 2 to finish me. I calculated for 1 and all of his non, but he actually had 2. So I didn't have enough.
And
I didn't have counter in hand. I lost. I was like, oh, it was like
that
locals.
literally happened to me yesterday.
Really?
I just doubled Amaru with somebody.
Yeah,
Couldn't. He only had.
just
I
enough.
swung. He only had 16K counter. I had 17K. So
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, I calculated for one of
yeah.
them, not for 2. Dang it. That's what happened. So actually,
Yeah.
mine was like 16-16, so it was exact. So that's
Oh
even
yeah.
greater for your end. So yeah, with that, let's actually
Exactly.
just jump into all the matchups we can kind of really go over. I guess the first matchup is actually the mirror. What would you say? What would you want to do or aim to do in the mirror?
Man, we dropping the sauce today, huh?
Yeah,
All
this
right.
is it. What this
All right, you
is.
guys. So this is a secret to beating mirror. Okay, let me tell you what. Against the mirror, literally your main strategy is just to get to late game. So don't even worry so much about swinging in with your characters. Just like how I said before, like you want to just swing with your leader and get them down to 1 health, and just build a whiteboard. In the mirror matchup, it really just comes down to who can find the most big bodies and get the other opponent to 1 health and close out the game with like multiple big bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So going second is generally more favorable in the mirror match, just because you have more cards in your hand and you'll have more dawn as well, which allows you to play Shura, search for bodies early that you need, and also see more cards throughout the game. And with any luck, it's just comes down to who can stick like 2 or 3 8 or 9 drops on board
Mm-hmm.
and close out the game with multiple big swings while their opponent's at 1 health.
Okay. Got it. Great. I just so big bodies, and then multiple
Hmm.
big swings. Pretty solid advice for most things, but definitely in the mirror, I think I like that it's simplified as this. You don't really need to go the whole ohm holy strategy early game. Maybe you can have those out early to fight your opponent if they have those out.
Yeah,
But
all the holies definitely come in handy.
mm-hmm.
You could take a more aggro approach. However, those bodies are not going to last too long on your board.
Yeah,
Um, there is a strategy if you play into the mirror, where you simply don't attack your opponent, which
yeah,
also works actually. Just don't attack your opponent early game. That will make sure that your Gidatsus are live and you can actually board clear their little bodies.
mm,
And then once you get to like 8 or 9 dawn, you're able to play Yamato to clear bigger bodies to reduce your opponent's ability to
yeah,
close out the game.
yeah,
So in that sense, I think we should make some. We'll go and say that don't bother to swing into your opponent actually early on, because swinging in early on will just allow your opponent more potential to like play free bodies from their
yeah.
life, clear your board with like a Thunderbolt, get like
Mm-hmm.
a Shirahoshi that they can set up with Katakuri later on. You really don't want to give your opponent that potential.
Yeah,
So really just try to limit the amount of swings that you're hitting their life with. But
Mm-hmm.
you do want to start swinging around like mid game, let's say after maybe like skip a turn or two of swinging, and then
Mm-hmm.
on your third turn start swinging, because you do want to put them to 1 health
Mm-hmm.
at some point so that you can actually close out the game.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah. I guess you can. It's pretty flexible with what you guys want to do, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So.
So one secret also in the mirror, if you do get your opponent at 1 health and you start to have these big bodies on board, um, if there's ever an opportunity for you to, if your opponent has like rested characters on board and they're at 1 health, you
Mm-hmm.
could just swing 5k to their leader with your leader,
Mm-hmm.
and it will force them to have to counter out of it, because it requires 0 dawn commitment. And if they don't counter out of the 5k, it will literally give you a window to close out the game. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
good way for you to clear out cards from their hand.
Yeah.
And then if they counter out of it, you could go and clear their board actually with your big bodies, which gives you like a pretty much a higher likely chance of clearing out their board and giving you a
Yeah.
guarantee to win the game essentially. So
So.
what I'm saying essentially, if they're at 1 health and you have big bodies and they have rested bodies, swing to their health. Do like a 5k swing and
Mm-hmm.
reduce their hand size, and then you could quickly pivot to clearing their board. Or if they just take it straight up, you could literally close out the game from
Yeah,
there.
just swing
So,
big. So you're gonna eat, more cards out of their hand. So
mhm.
that way. So or get them down to 0 health. That's also gross. I do want to say
Yeah.
there's something really finicky you can do in all YOLO matchups against anything that plays Yamato. Okay. Let's say your opponent's at 1 health and they have some sort of body you can Katakuri. You can do a bunch of attacks, play Katakuri, put
Mhm.
them to 2 health.
Yeah,
And
they
then they're
really are.
like, dang, my
Yeah.
Yamato lost like a lot of value. That's
That's actually a really good point now that we're talking about certain characters.
yeah.
Into the mirror match, if your opponent plays an Enel and they have arrested Enel,
Mm,
attack the Enel. Don't attack their life,
yeah.
because Enel, attacking Enel for sevens every time will either force them to have to use cards in their hand,
Or
or
life.
make them take a life,
Mm-hmm.
trash a life, which doesn't give them any trigger, which gives you more value than just swinging straight face. So
Yeah.
if you're able to go multiple sevens as opposed to like fives to life, go for the Enel and whittle down their hand. The deck
Yeah.
really does play a lot like Whitebeard, where it's all about card advantage. You're trying to
Mm-hmm.
reduce your opponent's hand size so you have a better chance of closing out the
Mm-hmm.
game later on.
Okay.
You can't really like rush it too much.
Got it. Sweet. Awesome. That's some real good sauce for the mirror. So with the next deck I'd love to go over the matchup is Sakazuki. What are your thoughts on this matchup? How would you want to approach it?
Yeah, Sakazuki is a tricky one for sure. It's a deck that has a lot of removal options, and they also run cards that prevent them from gassing out. Previously, during like the regionals, when people
Mhm.
weren't running as many of the 10-drop Kaidos, you could literally just focus on board clearing and like reducing their hand size, and less so focusing on their life, and you could win the game by gassing them out.
Yeah.
But since the introduction of the 10-drop Kaido in most people's builds now, the
Yeah.
strategy kind of changed a little bit. You kind of want to have like a better curve throughout the game so that you
Yeah.
can just be more optimal at like using cards up from your opponent, so that you can
Mm-hmm.
gas them out and also have a reliable amount of aggro throughout the game. And what I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that essentially is the key cards is basically your ohm. You want to
Okay.
be able to play ohm on your second or your third turn if you're
Mm-hmm.
going first, and get that dog on play. Having two bodies on your second or third turn is extremely difficult for Sakazuki to deal with. There's only a few plays that they can make to kill two bodies um, on their turn. And if you see the Enel, definitely play that card. It's the best card into Sakazuki. Like I said earlier, it's two things that Sakazuki can't really like.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they can't handle it, they hate is rush cards and cards that are sticky. And
Mm-hmm.
Enel is both of those
Bofa.
things. And
Yeah.
it just uses a lot of resources on their end, and it pressures their life. So it's just infinite value when you play that into that matchup. And really be mindful about, the cards that they have on their board. If you see a Kuzan that is a high priority like kill target, don't be afraid to use Thunderbolt from your hand if it means removing a Sakazuki or a Kuzan, I should
Yeah, the
say.
fork drop. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and then getting to 1 health earlier will actually allow you to make more control-based plays with Amaru, and by that I mean like resting a Borsalino so that you can kill it, and also pressure more life by resting their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Generally in the Sakazuki matchup, it's kind of a balance between uh, hand control, like
Mm-hmm.
hand advantage, and also board and life pressure. So
Okay.
you kind of want to have a good balance of all those things.
Yeah. If they
And
see everything, it may be really, really hard, but they don't always see everything, right?
yeah, once you
Especially
get
if
to
you're
late game
saw good curve.
safely, if you can get to late game safely, and you have a healthy amount of big bodies in your hand,
Mm-hmm.
for every big body, they have to commit like, one, like 2 to 3 cards to clear it every time.
Yeah.
So, for every big body, you're essentially reducing their hand size more and more. And that's really your goal in the end of the day, is just to make sure that you gas them out and then you could
Yeah.
just close out the
And
game strong.
And a little bit of a side note that I've noticed with that 10 drop Kaido, it was actually really popular, not right away, but after the first initial reaction. But now they've already kind of dropped it. Like in my eyes, a lot of good players have
Mm.
already dropped the 10 drop Kaido. And
Yeah,
because they just saw that playing 10 Dawn using 10 Dawn for a card was just too much, but they rather just have a bunch of small cards. Even though
yeah.
I think it's
So,
good, but you're probably gonna
yeah, it
see it.
depends on your local meta, right? Out here in LA, I still have a lot of players running the
Mhm.
10 drop Kaido.
Yeah, the price of that
I
card
see a
went up
few of
too.
them also running Mihawk,
Yeah.
which is another thing that I need to make sure you guys are aware of. If you are playing into Sakazuki and you see like a Mihawk in their discard pile,
Mhm.
be very mindful on playing your Katakuri on your 8 Dawn turn,
Yeah.
over playing the Enel. Always play the Enel over the Katakuri when you can, because it's a safer play. It's harder for them to remove that.
Yeah, exactly. This just requires an attack from them and then playing the Mihawk, right? And
Yeah,
that's
nothing hurts
gross.
more than getting Mihawk right after you play a kata. It's such a huge loss of tempo,
Mhm.
and you just basically lost
But
a whole turn in
against
developing
this,
the
it
game.
does nothing. Like you play it a Mihawk down,
Literally, yeah,
Enel just goes, okay, I guess I lose a life.
I lose a life. Exactly, it's a much safer play.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I think that's a really, really good note to self about that. But are we aiming to go first or second this matchup? What would you say if you win the dice roll?
I always try to take second.
Okay.
Going first isn't bad though into
Okay.
Saka, just because your curve is actually a more aggro curve
Okay.
going first,
Okay.
but it's a lot more hand dependent going first.
Mm,
If you go second, it hurts Saka a lot having to go first over second.
mm.
So, and also gives you more cards in your hand. So I think second is a stronger play.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I also do want to say there is a point at a time that they're playing a lot of Sabos lately too. Really
Yeah.
keep that in mind if you're planning to Yamato them at some point, and you're
Mhm.
really binged on that kind of control going for game there. Sabo, a well-timed Sabo can really destroy that game plan. So I guess be
Definitely.
flexible with that. I guess the main thing is they have so many of the options, but your game plan is a lot simpler compared to theirs,
Yeah.
which is good, right? So,
There's certain cards you want to be mindful of, for sure, like the
mhm.
Sabo. One other thing I will say is the Amaro is a key card in this matchup to like help you close out the game.
Yeah.
Sakazuki is a deck that runs a lot of 4 drop blockers. They
Mhm.
have the Rebecca, they have the Borsalino, and some
Mhm.
of them even run the whatchamacallit, the 3 cost 2K
Yeah.
counter
Yeah,
blocker
yeah, Bartomelo. Yeah.
Arcos now. So really, the Amara will help you rest those bodies to help you close out that game.
Yeah.
Before they can stabilize.
Great, yeah. And we'll probably have more notes about this, but I definitely think this is gonna be the biggest matchup you guys will see. But again, try to, I guess, go second, take away their curve. The
Yep.
Enel is super obnoxious always.
Hmm.
I guess it's just kind of there's a reason why this is the cards in SR, right? It's
Yeah,
super obnoxious, and then it's just a value game against your opponent, right? It's
it is.
I guess it has a high win rate against everything for a reason, Sakazuki, but there's
Yeah.
I guess do the best you can with what you got. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Sakazuki is an extremely powerful deck, but they also have to draw, all the cards that they need.
Mm-hmm.
They draw more cards than your regular deck, but they also run a lot of two ofs and like one of. So,
Mm-hmm.
it just really comes down to whether they got it or you got it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people will argue that Sokka has a good matchup into NL. I really think it's closer to like 50-50.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Especially in a good player's hands, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Definitely.
God, I think the ceiling for this deck is really high. So the floor is
Mhm.
also kind of high, actually. Everything's high, right? on an L. So
Yeah.
with that, the next matchup I'd love to jump into is Purple Luffy. What are your thoughts on this matchup? How would you approach it?
Purple Luffy, it's one of the harder matchups for this deck.
Okay.
Definitely, in my opinion, it's the hardest matchup actually for
Yeah.
this deck.
What
If
I've
they're
heard.
able to curve out into like double Magellan, it's very difficult for you to turn the game around.
Mm-hmm.
The deck also focuses on playing a lot of like 5-drop bodies,
Yeah, Gadatsu
which
is just
are which is
useless.
that yeah, it just makes Gidatsu like a terrible card. Gidatsu in general is a terrible card into Luffy because you're never really gonna be able to kill anything with
Yeah,
Gidatsu.
because they're taking their own life anyway. Yeah.
Mhm. So with that in mind, you actually wanna take away second from your opponent.
Okay.
You don't want them to be able to play the Magellan on their second turn.
Mm-hmm.
And it will also allow you to go wider by playing Ohm on your second turn and then curving into like a
Yeah.
category to remove one of their big bodies on your 8 Dawn turn.
Yeah. I will
Um,
say a lot of Purple Luffy, and this is kind of like the meta with things. I guess you didn't see this video, it's a Patreon video on Wills, but
mm,
for Purple Luffy, he really likes going first, and that's so that he can play like a 4-drop vanilla on his 3 Dawn turn. They'll go to 4 Dawn, right? And then
mhm.
on his next turn, he'll have 7 Dawn to play a Poly. That's his strategy almost every game. And then after he plays Poly, he's double Magellan. That would be like even better. Like you can double Magellan at that point.
That's
I've
interesting. After they play a poly, so what will be my Dawn turn going second right after they play a poly? Is
Yeah,
that
well,
my
that would be your
6 Dawn
6 Dawn
turn?
turn after they play a Poly. So you'd be already like you're on your 4 Dawn turn. They play a Poly down. They're at 9 Dawn, right, or 8 Dawn, and then the next one they go 10 Dawn, Magellan, right. So then you're brought
Yeah.
back to 6 Dawn again.
Yeah, if they can
So
have double Magellan,
I
if they
mean,
have all that, yeah, for sure.
I mean,
That's
it's the new
insane.
Kaido, right? It's the new Kaido kind of deck. It's
Yeah.
purple, right? Purple is
Well, fortunately,
always a hyper
that's
deck.
one of the downsides too of Purple Luffy is
Yeah.
that they don't actually have any searchers, so they really
Mhm.
have to just rely on drawing everything that they need.
Yes. Yeah.
So a lot
And
of
a lot of
times,
their cards have no counter. So going wide against them is a
exactly,
really good idea, which is
a great strategy. Go
Enel
wide.
does.
It doesn't always work out.
Mm-hmm.
One of my semifinal game in the regional, I
Mm-hmm.
did the go wide strategy. Opponent just so happened to have all
Everything.
1K counters in hand, so I was just like,
Yeah.
oh, you got it, bro. I didn't quite work out there, and he double Magellan me, so that kind of sucked there.
Mm-hmm. But no,
So yeah,
I think a lot of like purple Luffy players that don't know this weird this has this god curve, right? Going first and seeing that too is kind of nuts. Going second and doing that, but I
oh
think it's
yeah,
much easier going second and just playing Magellan and the next turn maybe whatever, right? Which slows you down. I mean, Magellan just
hmm
shuts down a lot of things. That's like their strat. It's really funny how like Purple's strategy just came. It's just playing Magellan, and it's like the stickiest card in the game, right? So
yeah, yeah. Who knew taking away your opponent's curve is
I
it's a
didn't.
viable set
When I
strategy,
first read
right?
that card, I'm like, this card must suck, And then you play it, and you're like, well, this card's way too funny.
It's so unfair.
It's so
I mean,
unfair.
especially when you're like gaining, you're
Mhm.
able to accelerate your own Dawn and also
Yeah.
reduce your opponent's Dawn. It's such a huge
Yeah,
swing in tempo.
exactly. Yeah, this purple Luffy leader is just so baked in. Fortunately, it does
Yeah,
have weaknesses, right?
definitely.
But In this matchup, if you're doing that, would you say going wide is generally a good strategy, if regardless of whatever Luffy's curve is?
Yeah, definitely. Going wide is a great strategy into Luffy. Also, being very mindful on their first swing, whether
Mm-hmm.
they go first or second.
Mm-hmm.
You always want to counter out on the first Luffy swing. Taking that first damage will usually mean that they are going to drop that law on you, and you just lost two cards on your hand.
Uh,
It's really tempting as an Enel player just to take damage, but you really have to be mindful and respect the law play because it really hurts our deck when we lose two cards in our hand,
yeah,
right?
understandably, that's a really good mention. Any against any purple deck, you have to respect that 4 dog law
Definitely.
play. So okay,
Yeah, I mean, I just bring that up with Pluffy because they can actually they can do that on their second turn,
yeah,
going first with no problem.
yeah,
Also, be mindful of that 9-drop Kaido. Always assume that they have it
yeah,
because that card is like super super strong and you really have to respect that card,
yeah,
and into a now it's like it's a death sentence.
yeah.
If you're at like zero life and they still have Dana, it's like,
Yeah,
oh man.
well, you might be screwed at that point anyway, right? I like to say that that purple, that night drop Kaido is very much so only a finisher. If they use
Yeah,
it on curve, that hurts them so much where it becomes impossible, right? They don't want to do that generally. I would say that would be definitely a big mistake. But obviously,
yeah, I mean,
Purple Luffy's a curve deck through and through right now, and
mhm,
loses to any sort of value gaming, or if you're able to somehow stabilize,
yeah.
you can survive against it. But it's
Yeah,
just
you really need to survive that initial onslaught. If you can
yeah,
get to like as an NL player, if you can get to like 8 Dawn or
yeah,
9 Dawn, you're generally you're
better spot.
pretty
Yeah,
safe.
yeah,
Just start chaining big bodies, keep
mhm,
your life up, and you could slowly gas them out. And then once they run out of cards, you could close out the game pretty
yeah.
easily after
Just
that.
don't make a lot of mistakes against the purple law combo. So that's always the
Yeah.
thing. Even though purple law, it's kind of funny. It's kind of some Luffy's don't like playing it because it's they don't do anything. Like the purple law plays it gets rid of two cards, but they're like, well, I didn't like. I'm not. I didn't feel like they did anything. They're like, I'd rather play a 4 cost 6K. Um, they want you not to take it sometimes, and
Well,
sometimes Will
I really
baits
wish
it.
I wish all Luffy players would think like that because it
Yeah,
hurts me every time they play
yeah,
it.
they all still play it, and good thing is that deck's a little money gated, right? From the queen ends. Obviously, serious players already have it built. They already have their queens when they bought the trial decks like a year ago, right? But you
Yeah.
know, now with the queens being $40 each, that's that's easily a $400 deck or a $300 deck. That's just
Man,
there.
insane
This
how a
game's really
starter
expensive.
deck card can cost so much money.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Like,
the thing is, most people will tell you don't play the deck if you don't have four queens. It's so sad,
yeah,
you
I
know.
feel bad for anyone who just got into this game and want to play like purple.
Oh,
Man,
Luffy's
rough
my
to play
favorite
purple.
character in the anime.
Yeah, you might want to stick to red
Oh,
Luffy,
I
bro.
also really like Sakazuki. Oh,
Oh
okay,
yeah,
yeah, no, yeah. Okay, I guess Bello Betty's okay.
right.
And then they're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
so that's funny.
Maybe last format. If we had
Oh,
a red format, it'd be a lot easier for you to be successful.
it's
But right
hard.
now, man, it's rough out there.
Money's
Maybe
hard, dude.
Enel is actually a great deck
Budget.
to start off with, minus the
I
katas
mean,
maybe.
Katas, these are like 75 right now. I heard Sanjis are like 10 right now. Yamato's are like 7. And then everything else is just whatever it is. I guess
Yeah.
Brulees they could probably cost something, right?
You could probably get away with running the big moms over the katas and just kind of like, get your katas as
Yeah.
you
Get your
make
friends.
money or
I
whatever.
have friends
Trade
at
your buddies.
locals. I'm not using my katakuri's right now, so I'm letting a friend borrow some katakuri's.
Hit up your
So,
boy Saucy. He's got 2 katas right now.
oh
I
yeah.
got you.
Yeah, we need more
It's rough.
katas. So they keep on making. I really wish they'd make these other cards prize cards. I think they did really good with the queen, but a Katakuri would be kind of cool. That actually
Oh, that would be sick.
that adds more to the market, right? So yeah, got it.
Definitely.
Next matchup I love to go into. So we talked about kind of the big three, and then of Enel and that. Enel Sakazuki, this Zoro. What are your thoughts on a Zoro matchup? I know we don't see it very often, but it's starting to
Yeah,
show its springs here and there. What are your thoughts on the Zoro
yeah, for
matchup?
sure. Honestly, Zoro is pretty free. It's like the easiest matchup for this deck.
Okay.
It's really hard for Zoro to deal with Enel because Enel is very difficult to kill early game.
Mm-hmm.
And the way Zoro plays, they kind of like boost up their tiny bodies for that one turn. They
Mm-hmm.
swing in big and they get your life down.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, if they don't kill you and you board clear them, it's really hard for them to do it again a second time
Yeah, especially if you
and
damage
a
deny
third
them.
time, and a
So
fourth time. You know,
yeah.
and every turn you're playing like a Yamato or a Katakuri and you get to that one health again, they have to commit three more bodies every time to get you to zero or kill you.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult actually for a Zoro player to beat Enel right
Yeah,
now.
and
So,
you could
uh,
even damage deny or half damage deny as you go through
mhm.
it, because that's generally a good strategy against Zoro as well.
Yeah, like
It slows them down way too much.
that's a great point. Definitely, don't just eat everything. If it's a 7K swing, don't counter out of that. It's not really worth it. If it's a
Uh-huh.
6 or 5K swing and you have the counter power, counter out of it. Generally, if they swing like five on their first turn while they don't have any bodies yet, I
Mm-hmm.
will try to counter out of that just because I run thunderbolts and I
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure that if I trigger thunderbolt, I have targets to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay.
but yeah, just
Okay.
it's a good game plan to me.
Sounds like a very simple game plan. Next one.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's the
no
same
pressure.
game plan. Red Green Law. Red Green Law.
Yeah, red green law is a little bit trickier. There's two routes that you can go with, and both of them are fairly I would say they're both are 50-50. It really just depends on the law's opening.
Mm-hmm.
You can go the starve route, go second, and basically don't attack into life until like your third or fourth turn
Mm-hmm.
and deny them cards essentially. That strategy gets mitigated if your opponent runs the two cost Sanji, which creates a lot of problems for that starve strategy because it allows them to just gain value and get more power to swing into you with. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so that strategy really will work really well because you have your Gadatsus. It'll help you remove their bodies every time. And also, once you get to that 9 drop Yamato, you're literally just board clearing and healing every turn. Yamato is the best card into the Law matchup. It's
Okay.
just about making it there.
Okay.
The other strategy is a more aggro-centric strategy.
Mm-hmm.
For this one, you either want to go first or second. It really doesn't matter too much. But you basically are racing your opponent in this one. You want to go like if you go first, ideally you want to get like the 3 Dawn
Mm-hmm.
Holly, 5 Dawn. You either go Gadatsu or Ohm into Holly,
Uh-huh.
and then on your 7 Dawn you're going in Nell, and then you're basically like all the while swinging into
Yeah.
their face to whittle down
Yeah,
cards in their hand.
I like in this too. You don't have to decide what you're doing until you see your hand too. Because if you see like,
Yeah,
oh, I have nothing to do. Like if your hand doesn't have Manel, Holly, you just do the other strategy. If you have all three of those, then we're all
definitely.
good.
Yeah, and if you go second, you draw into the Shura and find like an Ohm or something. You could, you could still go the aggro route. It really just depends on your opening hand and what your opponent's opening hand, I should say, looks like. Um, the Thunderbolts are really good into this matchup. Don't be afraid to use it if you have a good target. Like, let's say they have a Luffy on their board, or like a blocker law. Those are all great targets to use Thunderbolt on.
Mhm.
One thing that I like to do if my opponent has like a rested law blocker or a Luffy, I'll swing multiple sixes into it and force them to discard cards to save it, and then just thunderbolt it right afterwards. So I gain like a ton of value from that because I just reduced their hand size and I still killed the Luffy or the Law Blocker.
Okay.
Um, Amaru is super good into the Law matchup. They tend to be very aggro, so you get to 1 health pretty quickly. That will make your Amaru live earlier in the game, which
Yeah.
gives you more interaction.
Okay.
So yeah, these are all great cards into Law.
Okay. Got it. With that, maybe a really easy matchup that may have been seen as a the game killer is Whitebeard. What are your thoughts on the Whitebeard matchup? What should we be doing? In order to sort of set ourselves to have success against Whitebeard.
Yeah, so when it comes to Whitebeard, you have a natural affinity into Whitebeard just because again, Enel is like very difficult to kill, but you still have to respect the Whitebeard player. What that means is you're not just taking every hit, right? If they swing sixes into face and you have a 2K, definitely counter out whenever possible.
Mhm.
You want to get to the late game, play your Katas, play your Yamatos. Kata is really good into Whitebeard, especially when they're at 0 life,
Mhm.
because you can swing with your bodies to face before you play the Kata, force them to counter out, and then play the Kata, and then send like an ace or something to their
Yeah.
life, which they will be forced to essentially take into their hand at the end of their
Mhm.
following turn, which is
Yeah.
like
Katakuri's basically just
basically
remove a
removal.
card rather than just
Yeah,
yeah.
it's just if your opponent's at 0 health and you play a Kata,
Yeah.
it's just
The
free
only the
removal,
only funny thing
basically.
is that they actually play a Whitebeard after that, which can be quite annoying. I'm sure stem
Yeah,
spamming Whitebeards is actually pretty obnoxious in this matchup, but
it is.
it's
So
it's
if
always
I'm the white
obnoxious.
player, my goal essentially into Enel is to draw as many of my 9 drops as I can and
Mm-hmm.
just play it consecutively every turn.
Mm-hmm.
Because Enel actually doesn't have many. They can't really go tall that early. They require a lot of setup to be able to go tall. So every
Yeah.
time they go and you play a 9 beard, an Enel player is forced to essentially play another big body or just have to like go really tall to face, which means that they're not able to commit a big body on that
Mm-hmm.
turn. So you're forcing them to do one or the other.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, against Whitebeard, Amaru again, a great card. A lot of Whitebeard decks nowadays they run the 4-drop Marco. Amaru is a great removal tool for the Marco.
Mm-hmm.
Just resting it and then just being able to swing for an additional 3K makes you an 8K swing, which is like the perfect value into Whitebeard, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then the more removal options you have to clear their board before the end game, the better. In this matchup, don't be afraid. Again, don't be afraid to use Thunderbolt to remove like high priority targets like Luffy, or really any body that you can remove. The less bodies they have on board, the better position that you're in because it requires at least 3 swings to kill you at 1 health. So if they only have like 2 bodies at the end of the game, you should feel pretty safe in that you're not gonna be dying that turn.
Okay. Got it. Got it. Okay. Got it. The only other matchup I can really think of too is Red Purple Law. I feel like like a card like Enel really
Mhm.
shuts down this deck quite a bit,
Yeah.
and damage denying the deck's always really good idea against this. Any
Mhm.
small thoughts against Red Purple Law?
Red Purple Lodge generally is a pretty easy matchup for Enel. Red Purple really struggles with card advantage,
Mm,
and this deck is extremely good at like creating a wide board. Like if I go Ohm and Holly, they have to use their a lot
mm,
of resources to remove those 2 bodies in one turn.
mm,
Or if you're able to stick the Enel, it's extremely difficult for them to remove an Enel because all they have are like 4 cost bodies.
mm,
Just like Luffy, you want to be mindful of the 4-drop law. So that means, regulating your hand size so that you're under 7 at all times.
mm.
Um, and yeah, once you get to late game and you're able to like stick the Yamato or the Katakuri, for every Yamato and Katakuri, if your opponent doesn't have a round table or like commit 2 extra neg effects to remove it, it's just like
Yeah,
you just basically like
yeah,
it's very, very difficult for you to lose at that point,
yeah.
you know?
Exactly. Okay, got it. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Did you Do you have any like final thoughts about the deck right now as we kind of approach the end of this video?
As far as the deck goes, I think the deck itself has a bad rap when it comes to, playability. I know a lot of people think that Enel is kind of like just like what Kato was last format and the format prior is just a
Mm,
Luxaki deck. We call him Casino Curry here. Enel is very similar in that regard because it does in fact have a ton of triggers in the deck that can turn the tides of the game in your favor really easily.
mm,
But it also has very good plays in the deck. Like the own play is one of the strongest plays that you can make in the deck, and it's just so happened to be one of the strongest plays that you can make in any deck in general. Like play 4 bodies for 4 cost, and it's not even required for you to have it in your hand. Like you could search the top 5 cards of your deck
mm,
for that body. And
yeah,
the fact that he's a 4 cost 5k that can be a 6k on his own is not even that bad if you whiff the Holly, right?
yeah. Exactly. I mean, this
And
card's
then
a four. He's a 4/6, right? He's a 4/6 that had to be
yeah,
2 or less life. When you really think about it,
essentially.
he's a 4/6
Yeah, and
that cheats out a card, which it's really high value.
it's
So
extremely good value, and it's in a deck like Enel that starts with only 4 health and
yeah.
encourages
Well,
you to take damage.
this
It's
four,
very easy to
just
do
so
that
we
too.
know, so we understand, this 4 health. He doesn't really have 4 health, right? Because he's gonna have 5 health at least, because he's gonna use a skill
Yeah,
at least once in the game, right? So really,
absolutely.
yeah. So really, the 4 health is just a lie. So it's just I love when I play
They just
Queen.
don't want him to be like
Yeah,
Whitebeard. If they gave him 5 health, it's
yeah.
like, okay, this card is insane.
My favorite thing is when I play Queen. It's like, oh, I have a 4 life leader. It's like, but that's a
Right.
lie. I'm not actually a four
For
life
life.
leader, 12 life leader actually. So
Yeah, like infinite life leader. Shoot,
yeah,
he can do it forever.
it's really funny. But yeah,
Yeah,
he's a 4 life leader, guys. Just like no, he only has four
exactly.
life. But
The good thing you want to
yeah.
if you reason to play Enel, if you like to play big bodies, if you like to play a deck that's extremely hard to kill, if you like to play a deck that has game turning triggers in life,
Mm,
like just free effects, that's your deck, man. It's
uh,
honestly like one of the best designed decks in my opinion in the
mm,
format when it comes to its strategy. It can
mm.
pivot very easily into certain matchups, and it's just you know
Yeah, and
generally
it's
has
not a
a good
math game. You're not playing a math game the whole time of like,
yeah.
5 - 2 - 1. Oh, I have enough just to remove 2 cards if I play
Right.
this Lucci.
There's
So,
a lower skill ceiling to this deck, but
mhm,
also it has potential for skill playing as well. So,
yeah,
um I don't know. It's just I enjoy the deck. It's fun to play and
yeah,
who doesn't like drawing graceful charitying, for
yeah,
free and being able to do it every turn with Shirahoshi with
yeah.
Katakuri.
It's good. Awesome.
That's
Great.
it.
Hey,
I
well,
enjoy
thank
it
you so much for doing this little interview for your channel, right? This will be up on your
for
YouTube
sure.
very shortly. And
Appreciate you regulating the whole thing for me, Keck. Really appreciate you.
yeah,
And hopefully we can do more podcasts. Hint
my
hint,
pleasure.
Mr.
Yeah, we'll see you soon. So,
Sometime soon.
thank you
Yeah.
so much for watching the video. See you in the next one. Ciao.